This is PLAR English and I'm Andrea. So this is actually a makeup class. Just to note this here, um, because classes were canceled on Wednesday, May 17th, due to a power outage in town here in Sioux Lookout. So this is a makeup class for that. Um, but if you're looking it up in the WASA archive, it'll still show up as Wednesday, May 17th. And of course, I will be putting it onto YouTube afterwards as well. And obviously today's date, the 19th, will show up on YouTube as the date that it was posted on. So today we're focusing on assignment 20, all about paragraph writing. And in the last class, I explained how assignments 17 to 19 get you ready for assignment 20. We'll do a quick review of the steps to write a paragraph before I give you some more paragraph examples today. So I just wanted to start by going through another paragraph example. So this is like from the beginning to the end, what it would look like, the process of writing a paragraph. So here's an example. Get started here. So what will this look like? Well, as I said last class, assignment 17 to 19 get you ready for assignment 20. So there's actually a few things to do in assignment 17 that you'll save for later, right? So you do a couple of things in assignment 17, and then when you go back, when you get to assignment 20, you go back and look at what you've written in assignment 17. So the first step when you're writing a paragraph is to brainstorm, to think of ideas, just general ideas, right? So this is the very first thing that you do for assignment 17. You think of 5 general topics. So I've listed 5 here. I have winter, pets, holidays, memories, sports. Then the second step is to choose your specific topic. So how do you do that? Well, assignment 17 explains it, but I'll explain it again. You take one of these general topics, right? So I just said 5 topics. You pick one of them. So just for this example, I'm choosing holidays. And then what you do is you have a, in the circle, you'll have a circle, you'll have like a web that's started for you, a topic web, and you put holidays in the middle. And then you have to think of 5 subtopics to go with that main topic, right? So you've got holidays written in the middle, and then you just draw 5 lines out from it. And so what are some more specific things that I think about when I think about holidays? Well, the 5 that I came up with were spending time with family, time off of work, Thanksgiving, presents, and Christmas. So you could see how this helps narrow our topic down, right? I mean, if I wrote a paragraph about holidays, there's a lot of things that I could say about holidays. But we want to do this, we want to narrow it down. So if I narrow it down to Christmas, that's a lot more specific. So it's a lot easier to um, only have one paragraph when our topic is more specific like that, right? It's a lot easier to say, okay, um, rather than trying to write about every holiday that's out there or everything that I can think about with the holidays, I'm specifically going to talk about the Christmas holidays. All right, then the next step is to, right, so this is assignment 17, really. Assignment 17 is the first step, right, where you choose your topic. And just to be clear here, when I pick one of my subtopics, I only pick one, right? So I mean I have 5 ways that I could talk about holidays, but I've chosen one. I've chosen Christmas. Because of course you only need to write one paragraph. The third step, and it's related to assignment 18, is to make sure that you know why you are writing about your topic. So if I was explaining my purpose, I could say something like this. My purpose is to describe a time during Christmas that I enjoyed as a child. So I'm thinking about Christmas, and what am I saying about Christmas? Well, I mean, what I think about is my childhood, and actually the paragraph that I'm going to share with you will be be focused on one Christmas Eve, the that I can remember, or Christmas Eve in general, right? That I can remember from my childhood. Now, so assignment 18, the last question, um, will ask you to explain your purpose. And this is a good example of how you could do that. My purpose is to describe a time during Christmas that I enjoyed as a child, right? So remember, last class talked about 4 different purposes for writing. Talked about one purpose was to describe, right? So that's one possibility. Another purpose was to inform. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between describing and informing? Well, describing gives a lot more detail. So if I have a really specific topic like I have here, right, I'm thinking of one Christmas Eve specifically, and I can really describe what that specific time was like, then it's really easy to be descriptive. But informing would be maybe you know a little bit about something, but you can't describe in a lot of detail. But you know several things about something, and you can give good enough information to write. Really, what I'm looking for in terms of details in the middle of your paragraph is 6 good sentences in the middle. And of course, we'll get into the topic and concluding sentence as well, because those are very important. We'll get into that today. So really, for your paragraph, I'm looking for 8 sentences altogether. All right, so describing is just, it goes into more detail than informing. A couple of other, so 2 other purposes that your textbook mentions is to persuade. Another word for persuade would be convince. So to persuade or convince, and it doesn't matter. I mean, whether you use the word persuade or convince, it means the same thing. And then the 4th purpose that your textbook mentions is to entertain. Right? So maybe you just want to tell me a funny story. That would be nice and specific. If you know exactly which funny story you're telling me, then you could say something like, my purpose is to entertain you with a funny story about, and then you'd have to say whatever your funny story was about. And after I finish going through my first example here, I will share more examples of different paragraphs that have different purposes. So you will see an example of each one of these different purposes for writing today. Hopefully that'll give you some ideas for what you could write about. All right, then the 4th step here, this is optional. I think it's a helpful thing to do. You can make a quick list of what you are planning to say and in what order. So this is just your own little outline that you can use later. So I have some points here, and you notice that these are not full sentences. These are just quick points. I'm just using bullet points. And the other thing that you'll notice is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 points, right? So this would be for the middle of my paragraph. I'm just figuring out what I'm saying and in what order. I'm not even worried about writing a topic sentence or a concluding sentence yet. I'm just thinking about, okay, what am I going to say? That's all. So if I'm looking at these points, I'm thinking about, and again, this is about Christmas, right? So I'm thinking about my grandparents, and I'm thinking about the tradition that we always had to open presents on Christmas Eve. And I'm thinking about the fact that, because we open presents on Christmas Eve, we actually ended up having extra presents at Christmas, because we would do Christmas Eve at my grandparents and then Christmas at home. But that wasn't what it was about for me. Christmas was always, it's always been about much more than just how many presents I got, right? So that was part of how I would describe why I enjoyed Christmas so much as a child. And then another thing that I want to mention is just how much time my grandmother spent baking and cooking, and then related to that, how we all sat and ate together. And then just talking about what happened after dinner, you know, how we'd wait a bit before we opened presents, maybe by talking or playing cards. So this just gives you a peek at the sorts of things the sorts of details that will be in the middle of my paragraph. All right, so step 5, make sure that everything you want to say has something to do with your topic. So you want to take out any details that don't make sense, right? So I mean, for me, all of these things have to do with Christmas, with my topic of Christmas. And of course, I'm being really even more specific here with Christmas Eve. Um, but um, but something that wouldn't fit in would be if maybe I started talking about Thanksgiving, randomly talked about Thanksgiving when it's a paragraph about Christmas. Or maybe if I started talking about what we did before Christmas, right? I mean, because remember, this would be focused on Christmas. And then the last step is to complete the paragraph organizer in your workbook. So let's look at what that looks like now. All right, so this is what these are the instructions that you'll get. It'll say, look back, using the subtopic you chose in question 3 of assignment 19. Complete the following organizer for your paragraph. Remember to include your topic sentence, detail sentences, and concluding sentence. Now remember I said earlier that assignments 17 to 19 get you ready for assignment 20. So everything that you do leading up to assignment 20, you just keep that in the back of your mind. And obviously for your outline here, you need to use some information that you've filled in. As part of assignment 19. All right, so I have a note here. It says, make sure you write full sentences for your topic sentence, supporting sentence, and your concluding sentence. All right, so I'm talking about when you write your final paragraph, right? Make sure that you're using full sentences. Here in my outline, I've used full sentences the whole time just to avoid any confusion. Just want to make sure, and you could do that too if you wanted to. The only place that I really want to see full sentences in your outline is with your topic sentence and your concluding sentence. So anywhere that it says sentence, I'm looking for a full sentence. All right, so this is what I have as a topic sentence. So I've already shared my middle details with you. And so what a topic sentence does is it explains your main idea. And what I mean by that is it explains it explains what you're talking about, right? It gives one sentence to explain what your whole paragraph is going to be about. And some of you might be wondering if anybody has had experience writing, say, a longer essay. You might say, well, does your topic sentence have to be one sentence and only one sentence? For this assignment, for assignment 20, and for any other paragraphs that you'll be writing in this course, the answer is yes. One sentence for a topic sentence, and also one sentence for a concluding sentence. The reason for that is because you're only writing one paragraph and you only have about a page to write that paragraph in. Well, not about a page. You shouldn't go over a page. It should be a page long at most. And so because your paragraph is so short, it doesn't make sense to have more than one sentence as part of your topic sentence. I can give you an example of where it might be longer if for you might have, say, a research essay or any kind of essay, and the essay will be, you know, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 words, say, for example. So, you know, you're looking at a lot more pages, and so you might have, you know, a short paragraph to explain what's called your thesis. And we don't get into a thesis here, but we're just talking about a topic sentence, and a topic sentence is an explanation of what the whole paragraph is about in one sentence. And a thesis, It's just an explanation of what your whole essay is about. And you know, you 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 might take a few sentences to explain it. You might take a paragraph to explain it. Um, you could you could give a few details to sort of get into it and then you explain it. I don't really want to get into it too much more because we don't really we don't talk about a thesis in this class, but I've had questions in the past about whether the topic sentence has to be one sentence, and so again, for this kind of assignment where you're just writing one paragraph, the answer is yes, it is only one sentence long. Okay, so here's my topic sentence. When I was a child, I always enjoyed spending Christmas Eve with my grandparents. So you can see that's one sentence. Um, it lets people know that this is a childhood uh, memory, and it lets them know that I'm talking about Christmas Eve and being with my grandparents. And so then everything that I say in the middle will relate to that. I'm just going to skip ahead to my concluding sentence because your topic and concluding sentences will be similar but not the same. So for my concluding sentence, I have, so Christmas always brings back happy memories of family. So you can see that I've mentioned Christmas again, and I've mentioned, I use the word happy memories and bringing back, right? So that sort of lets people know, reminds them that, hey, this is something from the past, right? Memories from the past. So it makes them think about my childhood. And I don't need to use the word childhood again because it's clear that that's what I'm referring to. Um, and and um, and and I use the word memories to basically remind people that that's just about how I what I always enjoyed doing, right? So I have happy memories of family. That reminds people, oh yeah, that's right. The paragraph was about how she spent Christmas Eve with her grandparents. Now, I don't want to read out everything that I have in the middle, but I will explain what I've done. So you start off, you fill in your topic sentence, and then you go ahead and you fill in supporting sentence one, example, proof, or evidence for that. And then you do the same thing, supporting sentence two, example, proof, or evidence for that, supporting sentence three, and example, proof, or evidence for that. And then, of course, your concluding sentence. So really all you're doing is you're putting six sentences in the middle, right? So your first supporting sentence is really just one way of explaining, in this case, why Christmas Eve was so enjoyable, right? Um, and or what happened, right? I mean, I need to establish, I need to give you a little bit of information, right? Because this is a descriptive paragraph. So I'll just sort of give you this one example. Every year we followed a tradition to open some presents that evening, right? And then I sort of continue on. So this is what I mean by example, proof, or evidence. I give another sentence that explains what I just said a little bit more. So I say, at first, it was the extra presents that I looked forward to, but every year I learned to appreciate more. And then I go on, and then I have two more sentences, and then two more sentences after that. So all that your example, proof, or evidence is it's just another sentence to go with what you just said. So, so and as long as you have six sentences in the middle that help explain your main idea, then then um, then you're doing a good job of including enough details. So let's skip ahead here to what that final product will look like. Um, and then I'll go a little bit deeper into what what you're actually what you actually need to have. So let me just read this out. So this would be the final paragraph that I would write. When I was a child, I always enjoyed spending Christmas Eve with my grandparents. Every year, we followed a tradition to open some presents that evening. At first, it was the extra presents that I looked forward to, but every year I learned to appreciate more. For example, my grandmother always spent hours baking sweets and preparing the dinner. It really was a privilege to sit together, enjoying great food. There was also a rule that we had to wait a bit after dinner before we could open any presents. I really appreciated the times that we would talk or play cards. So Christmas always brings back happy memories of family. I've underlined the topic sentence once, the very first sentence, right? When I was a child, I always enjoyed spending Christmas Eve with my family, with my grandparents. And I've underlined the very last sentence, the concluding sentence, twice. So, Christmas always brings back happy memories of family. Those are important sentences. You definitely need them. You need to establish what your main idea is before you start giving any details, right? And then you need to remind people about what your main idea was, um, so that they feel like they fully understand what you've just told them. A concluding sentence is especially important if you're writing a persuasive paragraph, and we'll get to that type of paragraph when we talk about assignment 25. So in order to be convincing, in order to persuade people to think or feel a certain way, um, your topic and concluding sentences become really important because those are the sentences that explain what your opinion is. And if your opinion is clear um, and memorable, then you'll be much more convincing, right? But you still need to have a good topic and concluding sentence, no matter what your purpose for writing is, right? The other thing I've done here is I've circled transitions. You want to have at least 2 transitions in this assignment. I'll just tell you which transitions I have. And you always want to put a comma after a transition. So I have when I was a child, comma, every year, comma, at first, comma, for example, comma, and so, comma. Transitions help the reader follow along with what you're saying. When I was a child, that's a good example of how I let the reader know the time that I'm thinking of, right? Um, and every year, that's another way of explaining the time, right? And probably one of the easiest ones to use is for example, right? That'd be a really easy one to use. And I've chosen to use the word so with my concluding sentence here. So Christmas always brings back happy memories of family. I mean, I could have ended it differently too. I could have said therefore. I could have said thus. Could have said in conclusion. So there's different ways, different kinds of transitions that you can use for different effects. And your textbook gives you a list of transitions, and as part of my extra examples today, we'll also look at lots of different possibilities for using transitions. So this is just a note here explaining how I underlined the topic sentence once and the concluding sentence twice, and I circled the transitions. So for anybody looking at these notes after class, you can see what's expected of you, right? So, we have a good topic sentence, a good concluding sentence, and then we have 6 sentences in the middle. And then there's a checklist in your workbook that you can use to make sure that you understand how your paragraph will be evaluated. I just wanted to take a minute to discuss the paragraph evaluation, which is also in your workbook. So I'm looking at the topic sentence first. That's out of 2 marks. So I'm looking for a full sentence and a clear topic. So if any of those 2 things are missing, you'll lose some marks. Or maybe you almost have a full sentence, right? Then maybe you would just lose half a mark. Or if I sort of know what your main idea is, but I'm not quite sure, then you might just lose half a mark instead of a full mark. So it'll depend on what you've written. And content, at least 3 supporting details that clearly link to the topic, providing either specific information or an example, right? So in the middle, like I said, 6 sentences, detail 1 and example 1, right? That's the first 2 sentences. Then detail 2 and example 2, the next 2 sentences, and then detail 3 and example 3, the last 2 sentences, for a total of 6 marks. So really you're getting 1 mark per sentence. Concluding sentence that links appropriately to the topic, that's out of 2 marks. So just like with your topic sentence, you need a full sentence and your topic still needs to be clear. So let's say that you started off your topic sentence and you said Christmas is the best time of year. And then at the end, this is an example of where the concluding sentence would not work. But in the end, instead of mentioning Christmas again, you decided to say, this is why I love Thanksgiving. I mean, you know, you've changed the topic on me, right? So you have to stick to one topic the whole time, even in your topic and concluding sentences. Right, so that would be an example, right? If you suddenly change the topic at the very end, then you don't have a clear topic anymore, right? Because I'm not sure if you're talking about Christmas or Thanksgiving. So pick one topic and stick to it. Correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So it'll depend on how many errors you make. The example I always give is if you only make spelling errors, then you won't lose as many marks as if you make spelling errors and punctuation errors and some capitalization errors, for example, right? So the more different types of errors that you make, the more marks you'll lose. And then I'm specifically marking correct sentences as well. So I'm looking for full and clear sentences. And then of course I mentioned already, you need at least 2 transitions. So you get a mark for each transition that you use for a total of 18 marks. Okay, so now we are ready to go through more examples and practice. So this is what these extra examples and practice will focus on. So we'll be identifying the topic and concluding sentence in each example, and then we will get to explain in a full sentence the writer's purpose for writing each paragraph. And then we get to explain how the details in the middle support the main idea of each paragraph. And then the last thing will be to find the transitional phrases or transitions and replace them with different ones, because there's lots of different transitions that you can use. So I really wanted to give you lots of examples to help with that. All right, so let's unveil this first example. So here I have a descriptive paragraph. So the purpose of this paragraph is to describe what it was like to go skiing with my brother. So if I was finishing off assignment 19 and I was explaining my purpose, that's something that I could say. And then I have a title. You don't have to give a title if you don't want to give a title. I just did that because I think a lot of people are used to seeing a title. So I thought that would be a good idea. All right, so I'll go ahead and read this paragraph to you. Sorry, I'm just moving these lines. Didn't realize that they would be in the way today. All right, when I was younger, I really enjoyed skiing with my brother. It didn't matter that he was a much better skier than me. He helped me to improve, and that was what I needed. Often, we had to ski to get to the start of a hill because there were trails for different hills. My brother let me hold on to his ski poles while he pulled me along. So I got to go down more hills, and I wasn't as tired. Without my brother's help, I don't think that I would have wanted to keep skiing all day. Therefore, skiing was much more fun with my brother around. So you can see that I have a very clear main idea, right? When I was younger, I really enjoyed skiing with my brother. So that's my topic sentence that explains that this paragraph, it lets people know this paragraph is going to be all about, you know, the fact that I really enjoyed skiing with my brother, right? So I'm describing what it was like to go skiing with my brother. So you can see how the purpose for writing matches with your topic sentence and also with your concluding sentence. At the end here, I have, therefore, skiing was much more fun with my brother around. So slightly different words to say the same thing, right? I started off explaining that I really enjoyed skiing with him, and then I finished by saying that skiing was much more fun with him around, right? So I'm saying the same thing, just using slightly different words. And then I have, how many transitions? 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 transitions. Remember, you need 2, but I've used 5. Right, so I have when I was younger, often, so, without my brother's help, and therefore. So what I wanted to do next was show you how you could use different transitions instead of the ones that I have, right? So just to show you, I don't need to read it over again, right? So this one has new transitions on it, right? I have as a child, right, instead of when I was younger. And then the next one I use is many times. And then I have as a result, instead of I think I used so, right? And then I have if it hadn't been for my brother, instead of saying without my brother's help, remember I used without my brother's help before. So if it hadn't been for my brother. So and then I actually finish this. I use so with my concluding sentence. So you can see how I could have used different transitions here, right? So you can, it, you don't necessarily have to use specific ones, just whichever ones will work for you. All right, let's go on to the next paragraph now. So this is a persuasive paragraph now. The purpose of this paragraph is to convince or persuade the reader that Christmas is the best holiday. So a persuasive paragraph just shares your opinion. That's what a persuasive paragraph is all about. And like I said earlier, we'll get into persuasive paragraphs when we discuss assignment 24. Sorry, 25. All right, so let me read this example. In my opinion, Christmas is the best holiday. To begin with, you get the longest break. I really appreciate having 2 weeks of extra sleep. In addition, you get to spend more time, you get to spend time with more of your family. This is because more people are able to get together. Christmas might also be the only time when lots of snow doesn't bother you. You don't need to get to work, so you can play in the snow instead of clearing it. Therefore, I always look forward to Christmas more than any other holiday. So maybe I'll start with the transitions here. I have in my opinion to begin with, in addition, and therefore. So again, a persuasive paragraph, you're sharing your opinion and the reasons that you give for that opinion and the details that you give along with each reason, right? So I say to begin with, you get the longest break. And then the detail that I give after that reason is I really appreciate having 2 weeks of extra sleep. So the first thing I say is you get the longest break. And then I say something right after that to explain what I mean by that. So you kind of pair your sentences together, your reason and your detail to go with that reason. Reason, detail, reason, detail. Right. In my opinion, I think is a really useful transition to use with a persuasive paragraph. And then of course I have a topic and concluding sentence that are similar but not the same. Right. So I start off clearly saying that I think that Christmas is the best holiday. And then at the end, I say, therefore, I always look forward to Christmas more than any other holiday, right? So if I think it's the best, obviously, I'm going to look forward to it more than any other holiday. So that's how you can use slightly different words to remind people of what your opinion is. All right, so now I've changed up the transitions. So instead of using in my opinion, I say to me, right? To me. And you always put a question, a comma after a transition. And then the other ones I had before, I had to begin with and in addition. So instead of to begin with, I used first of all. And instead of in addition, I used also. So you can see that you could maybe use a similar transition instead. And then instead of therefore, I used in conclusion. Right? So there's lots of options for using transitions. All right, so now we're on to an informative paragraph. So remember, the very first example that I shared with you was a descriptive paragraph, and it really got into detail about Christmas Eve with my grandparents, right? I mean, I think it was pretty deep. Some of you that heard it might have thought, well, that's more than just what Christmas Eve was like. It was almost persuasive, too. She's trying to convince us that Christmas shouldn't be all about presents. And you know what? I bring this up because um, depending on who reads the paragraph and what they get out of it, they might have a different opinion on what the purpose is. And that's okay. And you could even have more than one purpose. All right. But for this assignment, you're really, just pick one purpose, right? If you're describing something in detail, then describe something in detail. If you're not able to describe in detail, but you still want to let me know about something, then what you'll have is an informative paragraph, right? So here's an informative paragraph. So the purpose of this paragraph is to tell people about my favorite card game. All right. And so probably an easy way to remember what an informative paragraph is all about is to say, well, it kind of goes through the steps for things almost. If you're trying to figure out what to write about and how to structure it, but you can think about things in step by step. Like maybe you talk about going camping, and the first thing you do, and the second thing you do, and the third thing you do, right? That could be a way. That could be a really good way to structure an informative paragraph for me. So in this case, I'm actually talking about my favorite card game, and I'm just sort of thinking about how the game is played and what we do as we play that game. So I'll go ahead and read this. Bauermela, so I do have a title here, right? So I want to tell people about my favorite card game, and I'm telling you about Bauermela. It's called Bauermela. Bauermela is a German card game that uses a different deck of cards, but it is similar to other card games that you might have played. First, you get out a special deck of cards and then choose who you want to be on your team. I always wanted to be on a team with my oppa and with my brother. Then the cards are cut and dealt, and then you figure out which suit is going to be trump. So if hearts is trump, then that is the suit that takes all of the other suits. Next, the cards are played, and the teams try to get as many points as possible. You want to give the other team as much stuff as possible, including goose eggs, noses, whips, and ladders. For example, if your team takes all of the tricks, then you give the other team a goose egg. In conclusion, a Bauermela might remind you of some other card games that you have played. All right, so you can see here that I have a pretty long topic sentence and a pretty long concluding sentence, and that's okay. I wanted to give you some different examples, right? Uh, As long as your topic sentence is clear and your concluding sentence is clear and they relate to that same main idea, then you've done a good job. Um, so I explain the name of the game and I basically let people know that it's similar to other card games that they might have played. And then when I finish my paragraph, I remind people about the fact that I talked about Bauermela and that it's similar to other games by saying, in conclusion, Bauermela might remind you of some other card games that you have played. So you can see that I use slightly different words to say the same thing. It's a reminder. And then here's a really good example of sort of talking about, what I do first, what I do after that, what I do after that. I mean, I could say I could use different transitions too, but here I've used first, then, so, next, for example, and in conclusion. So if we're talking about the first thing that we do, I use that transition first. So first, comma, I think of the second thing that we do, and I use then, comma, right? And then so is just I think it's a really easy transition to use. It could be in the middle somewhere. You noticed earlier I also used it with my concluding sentence. And then I have this transition next. So, you can think first, then next. See how they kind of go, right? The first thing and then next, right? Um, I could say first, second, third if I wanted, but I didn't. I said first, then, and next. And then here's that for example. Really easy to use that transition. And then I use the classic way to end it in conclusion. All right, now let's see what it would look like switching it up a little bit. So instead of using first, I have at first. And then instead of using then, I used next. And instead of using so, I used therefore. And then instead of using next, I used so. All right, so you can see how there's lots of different ways that you could use transitions. Actually, let me just read just the middle part here, just so you can see that it really does work with different transitions here. So I said my topic sentence, Bauermella is a German card game that uses a different deck of cards, but it is similar to other card games that you might have played. And then I use transitions to help the reader follow along. At first, you get out a special deck of cards and then choose who you want to be on your team. I always wanted to be on a team with my oppa and with my brother. Next, the cards are cut and dealt, and then you figure out which suit is going to be trump. Therefore, if hearts is trump, then that is the suit that takes all of the other suits. So, the cards are played, and the teams try to get as many points as possible. Right? And it goes on from there. I just wanted to explain how those transitions would work just fine. Um, and even using therefore in the middle, it is possible, right? I mean, if you've said something right before using therefore, right, then it could work. Probably most often you'll see the word therefore with a concluding sentence, but in this paragraph, instead of in conclusion, I used thus, right? Thus, Bauermella might remind you of some other card games that you have played. All right, so you can sort of decide which transitions you want to use where. And I always say, if you're not sure whether a transition will work or not, give it a shot. And if it doesn't quite work, I'll make a note of it when I'm marking your work, and I'll explain why, and probably even give you a suggestion for one that you could use instead. So I'd rather see you try. And I mean, if you've used a bunch of transitions and most of them work, I'll give you full marks for your transitions. I'll just make a little note. I'll say, don't use, in the future, you wouldn't use this particular transition in this case, right? If a transition didn't quite work. So I'd rather see that you give it a try, try out using a transition that maybe you've never used before, and just go for it. All right, so this is my last example, and it's an entertaining paragraph. So the purpose of this paragraph is to entertain the reader with a funny story about a time when I tried eating peanuts on an airplane. I just wanted to note too that this is actually a short anecdote. An anecdote is a short, amusing story. So there's a name for this kind of approach. You could share an anecdote, a short, amusing story. I'll just read it out here. I'm excited to share it. This really happened. All right, here we go. I will never forget this one experience that I had while eating a bag of peanuts on an airplane. Before there were peanut allergies and the need to purchase airplane food, passengers used to get free bags of peanuts that were somewhat difficult to open. Of course, I was determined to open my bag without any help, and I didn't want to rip it open with my teeth because then the peanuts would fall out while I was eating them. So there I was, trying to pull the bag open from both sides, struggling to grip onto the slippery plastic. Well, my efforts were successful. The peanuts flew out of the bag and several of them landed softly in the person's hair in front of me. The passenger didn't notice, but my mother was traveling with me, and she saw the whole thing. It was extremely difficult for us to hold in our laughter for the remainder of the flight. Nowadays, every time that I eat something on an airplane, I am reminded of the trouble that I caused with that tiny bag of peanuts. Another reason I wanted to share this example with you, I mean, we've already talked about how the first sentence is the topic sentence and the last sentence is the concluding sentence, right? So I clearly explain that, you know, what this story is about, right? And then at the end, I remind you about what the story was about, right? About this whole bag of peanuts and the trouble that I caused. But the real reason I wanted to share this is because this is the purpose is to entertain here with a funny story. But there's an awful lot of description in this paragraph. And if you were to look at my sentences, they're longer. I've used some different kinds of punctuation here. And I just wanted to show you that you don't have to write long, complex sentences, but you can, right? Some of the earlier examples, I think the first two that had simpler sentences in them. And a paragraph like that is just as good as a paragraph like this, right? So if you are still working on sentence structure and that sort of thing, just try to focus on writing shorter sentences and making sure that they're full sentences. But writing longer sentences with more details and using different kinds of punctuation, that's fine too. Um, I encourage all sorts of writing, you know, more detail, less detail. I mean, this is your paragraph, right? This is you, you know, maybe you're informing me about something, or maybe you're describing something to me, or maybe you're entertaining me with a story, or maybe you're trying to persuade me of something, right? Whatever your purpose is, it's coming from you. And every person has their own writing style, right? So I've actually tried to demonstrate a couple of different writing styles. This would be kind of a really descriptive style, right? With uh, with longer sentences, with lots of different punctuation, you know. And then if you were to look back at the very first one, maybe I'll just skip back to it. Skiing with my brother, right? Um, this is a lot shorter. All right, and both of them are good, right? So I not only wanted to give you ideas, uh, help you think of ideas for writing a paragraph, but I also wanted to show you um, different writing styles that you could use as well. All right, and this is the same paragraph with different transitions. I've got so, thus, and I have the transition in the end, in these days, right? So I was determined to open my bag without any help, right? Thus, there I was trying to pull the bag open from both sides. In the end, my efforts were successful, right? So you remember that part in the middle, all right? And then instead of saying nowadays with my concluding sentence, I've used these days. Every time that I eat something on an airplane, I'm reminded of the trouble that I caused with that tiny bag of peanuts. So just to be clear here, I just talk about making sure that you're writing your own paragraph about something that you know about or that you experience, right? Um, you, if you've been on an airplane and you have your own funny story about being on an airplane, and maybe it's a story that's similar to mine, right? You could write about that. You just don't want to write exactly the same thing that I wrote, right? If we're talking about plagiarism, you want it to be your own words. So if you take, you know, if you were to take this example and rewrite it and claim it as your own, then I would ask you to resubmit. I was talking a little bit about plagiarism, and I'm not worried about it. I'm just trying to explain how you could still read these examples that I have, and maybe one of them inspires you. All right, maybe you've had a similar experience. Um, okay, so then write about it. Write a paragraph about that for me. As long as it's not exactly the same as what I've written, as long as it's clear that it's different than mine, then you're good. Right. There was one other, yes. So okay. So just to be clear what you're working on. So this is what you should finish before our next class on Wednesday, May 24th. Oh, and here's a good opportunity to remind you that there is no class on Monday, May 22nd. Okay, so remember, holiday. Monday, May 22nd. No class. Right. So our next class is Wednesday, May 24th. And before next class, you want to try to finish assignment 20. Assignment 20 in your textbook is pages 40 to 42. And in your workbook is pages 38 to 41. So you read the textbook and do all the pages in the workbook. You can look back on this class if you need more help, and you're always welcome to contact me as well. Thank you to everybody who is listening, and have a great day, and see you on Wednesday the 24th. Okay, bye.